This week we're going to be starting a whole new series on this channel aimed at the beginner angler called Carp Fishing 101, where the plan is to take a deep dive into a certain aspect of carp fishing each episode to help you put more fish on the bank. So this week's episode is going to be taking a look at lead setups, namely lead clips, inline leads, heli setups, heli drop-off leads, and also the running lead clip from PB Products as well at the end. So make sure you click like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes, and let's get into a deep dive on lead setups. So the first lead setup we're going to be taking a look at today is a standard lead clip. Now this is how the majority of anglers probably fish these days, and is probably the safest setup to be starting out with if you're just getting into carp fishing as well. So we're going to take a deep look at this one in particular, which is the Korda hybrid lead clip. Now if you're just starting out, these would be my go-to setup for having your lead on, because they're super simple, hardly anything to get wrong, and really effective in 90% of fishing situations, which is what you want when you're getting going. You want to know your rig's out there, presented nicely, and it's going to help you hook fish nice and easily. So if we take a deep look at how this is set up, now this is a lead-free leader. It can be used with line straight through, with tubing just being pushed into the tail rubber, or lead core if your lakes allow it, but I've got it set up at lead-free at the moment because that's how I'm fishing on this complex. We then have a tail rubber, which just helps neaten everything off and offers resistance to the lead falling off. And then we have the actual body of the lead clip, which in this Korda hybrid case, the swivel is fused into the end, which I really like because a lot of the other lead clips you have to use a little pin to stop the swivel coming out, or it's running free, which I don't think is great if you're just getting into fishing or as a beginner. This is a really nice simple setup with it being all fused and sealed, and then you just attach your hook link at the other end on a nice little clip. So the idea behind a lead clip itself is that the lead is able to come off if you get snagged up, if you break free and the weed is towing, the carp is towing through weed, that kind of stuff. So if you imagine a fish has picked up your rig, is towing through weed or anything like that, I have this set so that if the lead gets snagged, it just pulls free. And then that fish no longer has the lead. It's easier for it to drop the hook link if it needs to in the future if it gets snagged up anywhere. And it makes it easier for you to bring the fish in without the weight of the lead on there as well in certain situations. So yeah, a lead clip, when would you use it over one of the other ones that we're going to talk about in a minute? Well, as I say, for 90% of your fishing and getting into fishing, this is a great choice to use. Fishing over gravel spots, firm clay, that kind of stuff, this is going to be absolutely perfect. Present your rig really nicely, offer really good hooking potential to the fish as well, feeling the lead really quickly. And where its limitations lie is it's not great in silty environments, really choddy areas or weedy areas. It might not give you the best presentation possible. Something like a helicopter that we'll look at later might be a better option for you. So it's a great choice, as I say, for 90% of you as you're starting out. I'd highly recommend the Korda hybrid clips because I find they're a great easy setup if you're just getting into fishing. So yeah, that's the lead clip, and we're now going to take a little look at the inline lead setup. Right, so next up we have an inline lead setup. Now this is probably the simplest of the setups because it is simply just the leader itself going straight through the middle of a lead and a swivel on the end to attach your hook link. So if you want real simple ease of use, this is probably the way to go. The only issue with it set up this way is you can't drop the lead, but it is safe because if you snap off, that lead will slide all the way off the end of the setup like so. So it's a really simple setup, and in my opinion it's probably one of the best hookers of a fish because the second it picks it up it is feeling the lead from its heaviest point and all its weight straight away, and it offers some resistance on that swivel until it breaks free running. And you want it to be able to come off that lead because, as I say, if you break off or you get cut off, it will allow that lead to come free, offering a much safer setup for the fish And fish safety should always be your main concern when you're picking one of these lead setups. Now, when would you use an inline lead over, say, a lead clip or a helicopter setup? Well, for me, it is my go-to if I'm stalking in the edges. So if I can see where I'm putting my lead down, I will always go with an inline lead setup because I feel it offers a better hooking arrangement, and I feel that it blends in really nicely. You've got nothing else, no lead clip, anything like that visible to the fish. So it's a really nice, neat setup. Where its limitations are is it's not the best caster in the world, it's not very aerodynamic, it also doesn't offer you the best anti-tangle properties, so you're more likely to get tangled up if you're casting a long way, especially if you're getting used to hitting the clip, that kind of stuff, getting into carp fishing. And also if you're fishing on anything other than a really firm bottom, it's going to risk you dropping that heavy end first into the bottom, and then your hook link itself is going to be hidden or sticking up weirdly off the bottom. It's not all going to lay nice and flat, so it's going to offer you the least versatility out of all the lead setups. But as I say, great hooking potential, excellent if you're stalking. And also its main use that you see these days is in solid bag fishing. So solid bag fishing, for those of you who don't know, is where you have your lead set up like this and a really short hook link, and everything goes inside a PVA bag with all your bait, all your rig, everything concealed into one solid bag. And when it goes out there, the bag melts, leaving your hook and presentation perfect on the bottom. So that eliminates its bad casting potential and its anti-tangle problems, because it's all sealed inside a PVA bag. So that is the main use these days for inline leads. Great little alternative to a lead clip if you're fishing short range, something that's not used loads all the time, so a bit different for the fish, so they haven't seen it that much all the time, and another great option to have in your armoury. So next up, we're going to be taking a look at the helicopter setup. So the helicopter setup is the one that you probably see the most noise about online. People always argue about should they be allowed in places. If they're set up incorrectly, they can be quite dangerous to the fish in the wrong hands, which is why I've left them till last, because they're not really the most beginner friendly. They take a little bit of setting up, and they're a little bit more complex, but what they do offer you is amazing presentation in really rubbish bottoms. So like really choddy, silty situations, it will allow you to present a bait where lead clips and inline leads will really struggle to give you that optimum presentation. So what a helicopter setup is effectively is I've got this one set up on a lead free leader like the others. You then have a little sleeve and a bead at the top, and the critical thing with a helicopter setup is this bead must be able to come free and loose. If it doesn't do that, it is not safe, because your swivel with your hook link attached to it, unlike the other setups, isn't at the end of the lead, it's running on the line. So you can see this swivel moving around here, but what that does is allows you to set a depth, and if your lead sinks into the bottom, your hook link can rise up and still sit nicely on top of the rubbish bottom. So it's always going to be presented. But the issue with that, as I say, is that it can't drop the lead. It can in certain setups, which we might go into in a little while, but you don't really want to be doing that as a beginner, really. The whole point of this setup is the lead end is at that end. It allows the swivel to pull through the bead, which is why it's critical that just pulls off there. And as you can see, that can go all the way up the line, and then it will be able to, I won't do it because I need to show you something else in a second. It will come straight off the end of the leader, which is why it's crucial that bead is really free running. Otherwise you can end up in a tangle. The fish will be towing around basically a death rig, because it can get snagged up and that lead isn't going to come off. Because at the bottom end of the setup, we have a little sleeve here, which then just goes over a quick change swivel. So the lead is on a little ring which can just change on the swivel. So yeah, it's a really great setup in certain situations. I actually use them a lot in my fishing. I do prefer them a lot of the time over a lead clip, because the way I like to do my fishing is that I like to be mobile, moving around, casting to showing fish, and I might not necessarily want to have a feel around to see what the bottom's like. So using a setup like this, it means that I know that if I cast it out there, 99% of the time it will be sat nicely over whatever I cast it over, because if it's rubbish bottom, the lead will be able to plug straight into it and the hook link will always sit on top. If it's in weed, I can move this bead around to set a different depth to the length of the weed, so my hook link can be sat up in the reed rather than getting dragged down. But also if I want to fish and I know it's fairly firm out there, I can slide that bead right down and it'll still be quite an effective hooker, because that lead is being hit quite quickly at the bottom against the beads. So it's a really versatile setup. As I say, it has its issues with fish safety if it's not set up correctly, which is why, as a beginner, if you're watching this as someone that's not into it, do a lot of research, make sure it's set up really safely, even check with a bailiff before you cast out, get them to check it over. Never be embarrassed about asking for help at a lake. There's loads of times you see people put up pictures online and you see people slagging people off because it's something that's set up dangerously. Well, that's never going to help anyone. Always try and be helpful if you're out on the bank. If you see someone struggling or they look like they're new, have a little chat to them, ask them if they need any help. Like, there's no need to be super secret and like, oh, and against people. Always be happy to help people, and if you're a beginner, never be afraid to ask, especially a bailiff, because the last thing they're going to want you to do is put out a dangerous rig. They'd much rather you show them something, and if they think it's dangerous, they'll show you how to set it up safely, and that is never more prevalent with fish safety than with a helicopter setup. Now, there is a way to set these up, several ways in fact, but we'll just show you one so you can drop the lead. It is a bit of a subject on whether it's a good thing to do, because the whole point is you've got that lead set up to help you pull against the bead to free the hook link. But Korda have got a setup that is used a lot and shown around called the Heli safe, which we'll just show you now. So this is the Heli safe on this setup. So it's the same lead-free setup. We've got the top bead set quite high on this one. You can see the swivel still moves around. We've got a bottom bead on this one, which you could have on the other one, but it's not really necessary. And the point is that the lead is attached to this little clip, and that if you pull down, the bottom bead slides until it hits the clip when you're playing a fish, and then it will play, and as the line pulls through against this swivel, it'll allow the lead to drop clean off the clip, while the fish is still thoroughly attached to the clip at the bottom. Now, where you would use something like this is in super weedy situations, fishing chods, needing to use a big lead to get out a long distance, in which case, if you're in weed, it might be more beneficial to drop the lead than to not. But as I say, the only issue with that is that if the fish then becomes snagged, it's harder for this swivel to pull off the top bead and get itself free. But if I use this Heli setup, as you can see with this one, instead of using a solid bead at the top, we're getting into the depths of it now really, I always use these little split ones that Korda sell, because they come on the line really easy. I can have it set super light at the top of the bead at the top, and it needs hardly any pressure to drop that off, which in my opinion gives you that little bit of extra security in case everything goes wrong and you end up cut off. But it's not really a setup I use a lot anymore. I tend to prefer the standard old school helicopter setup, which I showed you a minute ago. So yeah, has its advantages in certain situations, can be really good for fishing in rubbish bottoms, really silty rubbish, that kind of stuff. Not so good, although it does still work on clear spots, but you'd be more beneficial using something like an inline lead or the lead clip. So yeah, the helicopter setter, great option in certain situations. We're now going to have a look at one other lead setup, and that is a variation on the lead clip. So we're going to put this down and take a little look at the hit and run system from PB Products. Okay, so this variation on a lead clip is something that I've been using a lot in my fishing recently. Something I used loads quite a few years ago, but then for some reason I stopped using it, gone back to it recently, and it has loads of advantages over a standard lead clip, but also remaining quite a simple setup to set up itself. So this is the hit and run lead clip from PB Products, and it is a variation on your standard lead clip. So as you look at it, It looks very similar to the hybrid one I showed you earlier. Has one main difference in that the line coming into the back of it, again, is a lead-free leader, goes around the swivel on the inside and then loops back out the top of the lead clip and around itself. And what this allows you to do is when the fish picks up your lead setup and is hooked, it shakes its head, feels the resistance of the lead, this then becomes running. So as you can see now, that's sliding up and down. Well, that's not nothing new because a lot of lead clips can do that. Now the difference with the PB Products one is that the line is doubled over through the middle of this lead clip. So what that means is that for every inch it moves at the hook link, you're actually getting 2 inches of movement at the rod end, which means you're getting double bite indication. So you get really, really savage indication with these. But you don't really get little bleeps, you get proper runs and takes with this. It also has the added benefit of the fish safety aspect, so that if the fish, the unfortunate event that you get cut off or something happens, the fish can pull all the way along the lead clip, can go all the way through. The whole end can come along out of the lead clip. You see the lines now come off, and then this swivel comes all the way off because of the way it's doubled over on it. It's not actually physically attached to this swivel. So now all the fish is trailing, in the worst case scenario, is a hook link and this little tiny swivel. No leader, no lead, that's all fallen free, no line, nothing like that. This can pass the whole way along it once you're broken off. So it's a really, really safe way of fishing. If you're fishing to snags, out and open, it offers something a little bit different, having that running setup rather than a solid inline. So it's another little option to look at. I've left it till last because it's a little bit more complex, something a little bit unique. But also a great option to look at if you're looking for something a little bit different within your fishing. And if fisheries are really weedy and you want something extra safe, then I think there's nothing safer other than maybe the inline setup, but this will leave purely only the hook link, which is super, super safe. So now we're going to take a little look at how to splice your own leaders to save you some money in buying pre-made ones, because they can add up to being quite expensive, and it allows you to customize your leaders exactly how you want them to. So we're going to put this one down and take a look at how to splice leaders. So splicing is really, really simple when you get the hang of it. A lot of people are a bit worried about making their own leaders and stuff at the start, but it's really, really simple. So we've got ourselves some 40-pound core free from One More Cast. This is a lead-free leader. So what this is a version of lead core which just hasn't got the lead wire through the middle, and it is allowed on a lot more lakes than lead core is these days. So if leaders are allowed, generally this stuff is allowed, but always check the rules. And recently I've been using this one and it's been really, really good. I find it really easy to splice, really resistant, and it blends in really nicely. So I'm just going to strip off a little section. Normally you'd strip off the length of leader that you require, but we'll just do this for demonstration. And then you take a splicing needle. Now these are a specialist little needle which have got a really, really tiny little gape, really thin wire, and they're designed specifically for going inside the lead-free leader. Now the way to look at lead-free leaders is that they're effectively a tube of braid, and what you're trying to do is slide this needle down the middle of the braid so that you can pull the outside bit back through itself to make a really strong secure loop using basically friction. So you want to come down on these needles. You'll notice they generally have a section that is a lot thinner at the top. Now this is the length that you want to be looking to splice at to give you optimal security. So you want to work out the length of this against your braid and double it over. And then the way I like to do it is I like to put my finger against the material, and then I take the needle flat side, and then it's a bit fiddly, but you just slowly want to work it so that it just splits inside the top section of the coating. And then once you're inside, I take my 2 fingers around the top of the needle and then slowly tease it inside, and you'll start to see, if you've got it right, it won't pierce out the other side. It'll start to slide up the inside of the material, and that's when you know you've got it right. So you just slide it down. This stuff slides really easy once you've got it right, down to where it starts to widen on the needle, so you know you've got enough. Make sure you've got enough that will definitely come through the other side. And then once you're at that point, you then just push the needle out So it's now came out the top. Close your gape up a little bit, and then you take whatever you want to splice on the end. So this is just one for my inline setup. So we're going to take a swivel, slide it on, so it's now on there. Bring the tag end into the splicing needle gape, and then you slide the material up. So then once you're up, you then slide it all the way on. Just with your fingers, just work it gently. These needles are quite delicate, so be careful. Until your tag end comes out the other end. Pull it all nice and tight against the swivel, and then you can slide the material all the way back, and you'll see that is now absolutely rock solid on there. That is not going anywhere, but you'll see you've got a tag end left. So then all I do, just pull it out a tiny little bit, take a pair of scissors, cut that tack end off, pull it all back again, and you'll have a seamless join, and you won't hardly be able to see where you've done that other than it being a little thicker. And that will now withstand absolutely anything there. That is solid as a rock. So that is how you splice onto a needle, and so it's really, really simple. I don't think that you'll have any problems once you've tried it a few times, especially with this stuff. I've used loads of different leader-free materials, and this one recently, since I've been using it, has been the easiest I've found to splice. So yeah, hopefully this video has been informative to you. Hopefully there's been lots of content about the lead setups that you've really enjoyed. Made it nice and easy for you to understand. If there's anything you want to see in future videos, leave it down below in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.